Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson. It's time for yet another match preview. Newcastle back at St James's Park on Wednesday night to face Spanish side Bilbao in the Champions League, hoping to rid themselves of that nightmare down in the capital against West Ham. We'll have a little look at that, get John's perspective on it, and of course look ahead to that game on Wednesday and talk about the possible big changes that the majority of you guys are calling for. John, welcome back to the podcast. I ask you this every week. How are you doing? I'm assuming not too well after Sunday.
I'm low on the snake's belly, I would say, which is about exactly the same as every other Geordie that had to sit through that disgraceful, abysmal display at West Ham. I think it's the worst display under Eddie Howe that we've ever seen. We were lethargic, we had no energy, we had no desire. I would almost say we had no caring. I don't want to go that far because it's a heck of an accusation against what has been a band of brothers, etc., etc. But it looked like that. You cannot help thinking like that. I mean, it was absolutely shocking. What happened to our big theme that we had, that intensity is our identity? Where was the intensity there? It was, I mean, at half time, Eddie took the bull by the horns, took big stars off, Waldemar and Gordon, and 3 substitutions. What did we get the second half? Not a single thing. The team that started was a disgrace, and the subs were a disgrace. I mean, it was absolutely alarming. And I don't want to go off on a tirade because it's too late, and I'm certain you don't want me to. But I really feel depressed and angry and upset by the means of performance. I can understand a lack of form. I can understand players not playing to their wonderful best every game. I can't understand what I saw in that game. This was the worst side in the Premier League. Worst start in 52 years, lost every home game, give away a goal in the first 5 minutes every time they played virtually, and did it with us. And do we take advantage? No, we're humiliated in the end. And it was almost a resignation about them from the kickoff. As a team, there was a resignation that, we're going to have to get through this, get on the coach, and let's get it back away home. It was unforgivable, really was, in my book, unforgivable.
What do you think the message would have been from Eddie Howe yesterday, today, going into Wednesday? Quick turnaround, which some people will welcome, so you're not kind of stewing on that performance and the effort that was given on Sunday. But on the other hand, is that enough time to really lay home just how bad it was and how it's unacceptable and how it can't happen again? Because the press conference, John, after the game, it's the first time that I've really seen Eddie Howe properly fuming. You know, he's had a few choice words to say before, but he was just a different kind of beast, if you want, on Sunday after the game. He looked really, really angry. Do you think that'll transfer into the training ground over Monday, Tuesday, into the game on Wednesday?
Well, I certainly hope so, because they didn't listen to him immediately before the game at West Ham, and they didn't listen to him at half time because there wasn't a change in the way they played. And the way they played was absolutely abysmal. And he has every right to be angry. But haven't we? This isn't the first time this season. Are you so angry you're throwing your clothes away there, Andrew? This isn't the first time this season that we've talked about let's have a quick turnaround so we can get a bad result out of our system, and isn't that a help, etc., etc. We've been here before, but never as bad as this time, given the quality of the opposition and our attitude. Above all else, what infuriated me was our attitude. It was disgraceful. And I hope they're listening in the 2 days that they've been up here since, because they ought to be. But you know what? This on Wednesday night isn't the test of Newcastle United. They get up for the Champions League. They get up for the Champions League, particularly at St James's Park, played under lights in midweek. grand stage, etc., etc. To test if the moral fibre of each and every one of these players will be at Brentford on Sunday. That's when the tests come. Oh, I'm sure we'll see them come out against Bilbao and bristle and look as if they want to be all over them and boom, 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 and the intensity will be back. What does that tell us? That is in some ways as big a condemnation of them because they can do it when they want to do it. But why didn't they want to do that after 3 home wins on the belt in 8 days? Why didn't they want to do that at West Ham?
Does that fact, John, because I think it is pretty much fact that they get up for these big games, whether it's the so-called top 6 in the Premier League, whether it is those Champions League nights, and then they can't do it against a lowly West Ham, and they most likely will get beat against Brentford on Sunday. We wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. Does that annoy you?
Oh, infuriates me, because by their own actions, they've taken away every excuse they've got. They've shown they can do it when they want to do it. Why do they not want to do it when we go to West Ham, when we go to Leeds and Aston Villa, and when we go to Brentford? It is that they, out of their own actions, are condemning themselves so much it's untrue, because it's not a matter if they haven't got the ability, it's a matter that they haven't got the wish, the determination, the fire in their belly. I mean, Geordie fans who care so passionately about the club cannot understand performances like we got at West Ham, because they wouldn't give a performance like that. The Geordie on the terraces wouldn't give a performance like that. He may be well short on ability. He may be embarrassingly short on ability, but he wouldn't be embarrassingly short on heart, on desire, intensity is our identity. How dare they say that after putting in a performance like they put in at West Ham?
If you, John, were invited into the training ground, and not specifically to deliver a team talk ahead of Wednesday, but just in general to maybe give the squad that little morale boost, or others might argue a kick up the backside, what would you say to the group?
Well, they need a kick up the backside, not a morale boost. Why do we need to massage their egos and tell them that they're really good players and have been dead unlucky recently, and it was an own goal in a 93rd minute goal that beat us at West Ham, and if you please perform like you're capable of performing, we will be all right, etc. I wouldn't want to do the talk before we played on Wednesday night. I would want to do the talk before we went to Brentford after we've won on Wednesday night. And I wouldn't massage their egos, and I wouldn't give them a morale lifting boost. I would absolutely blowtorch the paint off the walls, because what is missing here, it's no good being nicey. That doesn't work. And I think Eddie is terrific at nicey. I suspect you get the other side of him in private, and I admire him for that. He won't normally criticize players in public, but he'll criticize them in private. But I would go in and I would point the finger at every one of them, and I would say, you, Anthony Gordon, you're living on reputation. You aren't a good player. You are a player that picks your matches. When it suits you, you look a world beater. When it doesn't suit you, I've got to bring you off at half time. Joe Linton, you're another one living on your reputation. Maybe it's injuries, maybe it's not. But I tell you what, you're not the player you think you are. Currently, at this moment, you're not the player you think you are. Anthony Gordon, you're not the player you think you are. You all think that you're Champions League superstars that won a cup at Wembley. Well, I'll tell you something. That's what you were. It's not what you are now. And you've got to get back to that and get back to it quick. Because if you don't, I will drop you. You know what? After that game at West Ham, if I was the manager, I could drop 10 of that 11 team. I could drop all 10. The only one I would exempt would be Murphy, who I thought produced something like he's capable of producing, looked as if he cared, looked as if he wanted to play with a little bit of urgency. None of the rest did. I would say to every one of those 10, I don't think for 1 second he'll do it because it's a Champions League and it's a big competition and it's at home and he knows they'll be up for the Champions League. But I would be ready to drop so many players on that. I mean, we got nothing from the fullbacks because both Kraft and everybody else have played right back, and we've played more people at right back than they've got in the Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, we've got nothing that Byrne can't do it, Kraft can't do it. We've got no attacking punch from there where a lot of our best attacks come from the wide positions, as Livramento and Hall and Trippier do. We've got nothing from our 2 fullbacks. Our midfield 3, if anybody tells me they're the best in the Premier League again, they're not anywhere near the best 3 in the Premier League. That's an insult to the Premier League. It really is. Tonali can be the exception here. Joe Linton, living on his reputation. Anthony Gordon, living on his reputation. Pope, absolutely shocking on the first and third goals. He may make some saves, good saves, but on the first goal, I mean, what is it? He punches everything. He cannot catch a cold. How about catching the ball? I mean, he punches everything, and then, in a lottery, the punch can go absolutely anywhere. On the first goal, he punches it. It's recycled, and then he should get both hands to the ball. His fault. Third goal, total embarrassment. Squirms through his legs. Total embarrassment. Pope was absolutely shocking. Gordon was shocking. Joe Linton was shocking. The midfield 3 was shocking. And they're our big hitters, Andrew. I've just named our big hitters there, and every one of them got a minus.
Well, the big debate has been about Nick Pope and Aaron Ramsdale, and I'll get your thoughts on that in a moment, although I think you've maybe just given the answer away. But just on, obviously, people will say, John, yes, awful performance against West Ham, arguably the worst you've seen under Eddie Howe. But a bit of perspective is needed. You know, they just won 3 on the bounce. Yes, it hasn't clicked away from home, but, you know, get a couple of wins and the table looks a lot rosy. Are we past that stage, though? I mean, if you're sitting down with someone who's saying, look, it was awful, but let's not overreact.
No, we're not. That's the easy thing to say. That's the lazy thing to say. I don't mean you. I mean people that would say that. Because it isn't, we're not reacting too quickly. We're reacting because if we don't, we're in trouble. I'm now talking about the Premier League. I'm not talking about the Champions League. We've won our last 2 in the Champions League, and we'll beat Bilbao. But that'll make me just as angry, Andrew, because we know we can do that, and yet we don't in the league. If we look in the league, we're 13th. For goodness sake, we're 13th. So how can we be overreacting? We're 6 points behind Sunderland. Before this season kicked off, Sunderland was supposed to be struggling to be able to stay in the Premier League, and we were supposed to be a Champions League club. It reflects the season both those clubs are having. That's in praise of what Sunderland have done and fingering what we've done. We're not overreacting. It is becoming a staple diet in the Premier League, this. I mean, we've gone 5 away games with no wins. We hardly score a goal away from home. We look poor. We look lifeless. How are we so lifeless when our game has always been built on intensity? I mean, if we do not get angry, if we do not do something about this season is going to slip away from us. And we're going to wake up in January and suddenly find that we're out of the Carabao Cup at the semi-final stage or whatever, and that we're perhaps not going to qualify for you. And then where are we? We turn around and we're 13th in the Premier League with no away wins. We're playing the way we're playing. And by the way, these 5 games away from home, we've not played a top quality side yet. Bournemouth is the only half-decent side we've played. We haven't played away to Man City, away to Arsenal, away to Liverpool, despite the way that they are played, etc., etc. We haven't played the big teams. We've played Villa when they were awful. We played Leeds when they've just come up. We've played West Ham, who are frighteningly bad. We haven't played good sides and we still haven't managed to win. We're not overreacting. We're shouting, please, inside the Newcastle dressing room. Can you hear the alarm bells? Is it soundproof, that dressing room? Can you not hear everybody outside with the alarm bells? Because you've got to do something before it's too late. It's no good when it is too late saying, hey, well, it's all gone now, but what a shame. If we stir ourselves, it's not too late. But I tell you what, Andrew, very shortly it will be too late if we don't get this sorted quickly. This, I feel, to a certain extent, is the biggest test Eddie's had since he's coming. Don't get me wrong, Eddie's been wonderful. I rate him so highly, it's untrue. He's a class manager. He is a great tactician. He cares like there's nobody's business, etc., etc. This is his test because, you know why? Because he's got the best squad he's ever had in terms of depth and in terms of ability. And he's got players who can produce what they've just produced in the Carabao Cup last season, in this, and in the Champions League. He's got all these players, and yet he is stuck. How many times this season has he said, oh, it's good that we've got a midweek game because we can get this out of our system quickly. Then we'll win midweek and everything's hunky-dory again. We're sitting on a seesaw. We're on a trampoline. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And honestly, I'm getting literally sickness with it and no enjoyment whatsoever. It's more infuriating to me, Andrew, than when we were horrible under Ashley, because we expected to be horrible, and the restrictions put upon us and the staff we had on the playing side, etc. We were going to be horrible, but we're so close to being good now. We're so close. I want to get hold of every one of those players by their two shoulders and shake them and say, you're better than this. You individually are better than this. Why are you doing it? Why are you allowing it to happen to you? And please wake up. Don't think you can subconsciously pick your games where you play well. Oh, we'll play well today because it's a Champions League and it's under lights and we're at home and that's lovely. And the focus is on us and the world's looking at us and we'll do well. We'll go to West Ham on a Sunday. Oh, dearie, dearie, dear. Can we be bothered as much? We can't be up all the time, so this is the game when we won't be up. I mean, I found Sunday frightening. I found the lack of inspiration. What's happened to these wonderful leaders we're supposed to have in the dressing room? This bunch of leaders. Who was leading from the skipper to the alleged lieutenants? Who was leading on Sunday?
No, it's a fair question, and the conclusion that many have come to, because it was that poor. And Bilbao themselves aren't having the best of starts to their domestic campaign. 12th in La Liga, 4 wins, 2 draws, and 5 defeats. Someone who I know who watches them closely, when I asked them how will they play on Wednesday, said he's got no idea because they're playing that badly. So there's some food for thought. Just a reminder, ladies and gents, that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box to get a discount offer on your NordVPN plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Prices start from little over £2.30. One subscription, 10 devices. Perfect for keeping you safe while browsing on public Wi-Fi. Thank you if you've already signed up. You're supporting the podcast while also keeping yourself safe while online. Right, John, shall we talk about potential changes? And we'll go back to the man you just discussed about 5 minutes ago, and that is Nick Pope. Simple question, John. Is Aaron Ramsdale in for Nick Pope?
He is in my household, but he's not in Eddie Howe's. I think Eddie Howe will play Pope. I'd play Ramsdale. I think if we were playing Brentford the next game instead of the Champions League, Eddie might well play Ramsdale. But for the Champions League, I think he'll play Pope. I will play Ramsdale.
Yeah, John, I agree with you. If I was making the choice, I'd be playing Aaron Ramsdale against Bilbao. However, I don't think Eddie Howe will make that change. I actually think unless Nick Pope has an equally bad performance to the one he had at West Ham, I think Pope will be in goal against Brentford as well, because I think Eddie Howe, if he's going to make that sort of change, and it is a massive change, I think he'll make it during the international break, and then the return to football. Once that break's come and gone, we might see Ramsdale in between the sticks. We look at the back four. We have to hope Kieran Trippier is back at right back, because Emil Kraft just looked like a player who hadn't played many minutes, which is a little bit unfair on him, but that's just the reality of the situation. You go into centre back, assuming that we still play a back four, John. Malik Chiao was probably the only other one that maybe came out with a tiny bit of credit against West Ham. Is it him and Botman at the back, or does Fabian Schär come back in?
That's a great question. You're absolutely right. The only other one that might have come out with a little bit of credit was Chow. We've got to pray and get the prayer mats out that Trippier's back, because the two fullbacks, Kraft and Byrne, going forward were an embarrassment. I don't think we've got much other option in Byrne at left back on Wednesday night, but it's got to play Trippier. I mean, I'd be tempted to have Sean for Botman, but I think he'll go in because we know how good Chow and Botman can be as a pair recently. I think he'll go with them.
Okay. Dan Burn will probably be at left back. Lewis Hall is edging ever closer to match fitness. And I guess as much as Dan Burn has been exposed at left back in recent games, John, maybe Eddie Howe's just thinking, do I use the international break as a chance to just get Lewis Hall up to scratch rather than playing him in the final two games before the break? A lot of people would say, scrap that. If he's good enough to be on the bench, if he's fit enough to be on the bench, he's fit enough to start. What we're losing without having an out-and-out left back there, it's worth the gamble. Where do you sit on that?
Well, I don't think Hall's that close, Andrew, although off wish he was. I mean, Howe did come out after West Ham in explanation for why he didn't bring Hall on and said, well, he shouldn't have actually been on the bench. He wasn't fit. He'd had one training session with the boys, and he only was on the bench because he hadn't another senior pro to put on the bench. I'm not certain that's a good enough reason to have a bloke on the bench if he can't be used, but he's absolutely nowhere near, I think. Certainly, he was considered by Howe to be nowhere near at West Ham. Now it's a case of does needs must. Now we're where we are. But I don't think he'll throw Hall in at all against Bilbao. He might get on the last 10 minutes just to get a taste of the thing, but I don't think he's anywhere near ready, and therefore no. But I mean, my feeling about Dan Burnett's left back anyway. We don't need to go into that anymore, but I don't know that we've got much choice on Wednesday night. But again, it sounds ridiculous when we're playing a Champions League match, but I'm not worried about Wednesday night. I'm worried about Sunday.
Yeah, as most people are, John. Obviously, it's just important to get the win against Bilbao, isn't it?
Yes.
A bit of a boost. But then we've said that, they just won 3 games on the bounce. We went into West Ham flying high, and look what happens. But anyway, into the midfield we go then. It's got to be Jacob Murphy, hasn't it? The only man that's really producing anything going forward, as you said. That's his place, isn't it now?
Yes. I mean, if we take the midfield 3 first before we go to the wingers, Bruno's going to play because he's captain. Tonali's going to play because he's the best player. Joe Linton doesn't deserve to play. Joe Linton's playing on reputation. He's playing on what he was, not what he is. And maybe it'll all come rosy on Wednesday night, but will it?
Yeah, he wouldn't get in my team. We discussed it last week, didn't we, before the West Ham game, John? I said if it was me, he wouldn't be starting. I mean, it's a toss of a coin, really, between Jacob Ramsey and Joe Willock. Joe Willock's probably the fitter one. Ramsey's the better one. But, what do you do? Who's
Well,
going
we're
to make
supposed to have three good left-sided midfielders, Andrew, in Joe Linton, Ramsey and Willock. And right at this moment, we haven't, mate.
bang average?
All three of them aren't good enough for various reasons. Joe Linton's obvious. Ramsey's not fit enough, although he's got the overall ability. And Willock's a mile off the bloke that we saw when he first come to the club.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he does drop Joe Linton, it'll be for Jacob Ramsey, and hopefully the lad can make an impact. Back to the point about Murphy.
Murphy's in automatically. He's the only guy that come out with real credit at West Ham for me.
Over to the left, I think the big one is Anthony Gordon, because he's deservedly got a lot of stick for his performance against West Ham. And it is, again, a difficult one because you say, you played awfully. Got Harvey Barnes in a good bit of form. He gets the nod for some. However, the games Anthony Gordon gets up for are these exact games. So it's, what do you do? Do you play a man who doesn't deserve to play, however he's likely to be the man who makes the difference? Or do you not play him as punishment for how bad he's been out of the Champions League? What do you do?
Isn't it awful? Isn't it an awful predicament? Because it really is bad. I mean, the answer is that if Gordon plays on Wednesday night, I would expect him to play well, because it is his stage. He's scored goals in the Champions League. In his last 19 games, I think, in the Premier League for us, he's neither scored or assisted. He is absolutely atrocious. And you know what? I am so furious that I'm hugely tempted to drop him on Wednesday night and play Harvey Barnes and say, I'll tell you what, pal, if you can't be bothered to play at West Ham, I can't be bothered to pick you for this game. You can just sit and stew over there, just to get the message home, because Barnes will do a job for you, and then maybe you'll have to bring Gordon on. I think he'll play Gordon. Without a shadow of doubt, because he's England and because he does well in the Champions League. But I would drop him just to make the point to you. I'll tell you what, pal, nobody's bigger than this club, and you can't pick and choose your matches. Your performance deserved you to come off at half time at West Ham. All of a sudden, he was feeling his thigh or something. I mean, how many times have we had that with Isak? Every time Isak was going to be dropped last season, he had a little twitch in his thigh, nothing serious, but a little. And this is to help save the face of Gordon getting hauled off at half time at West Ham. I would drop him just to make him realise that you can't pick and choose your matches at Newcastle. The club are bigger than you, and therefore you're not starting because you didn't justify it at West Ham. I don't think for one moment it'll happen. I think Eddie will play Gordon, but I would try to shock him rigid, because that's the only tactics that's going to work with a lot of these players.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think the majority of listeners and viewers will as well. Then you got Nick Valdemare, all being fit and well up front. I've asked people to send in their starting 11s, John, or rather the changes that they would make. Thank you to everyone who got in touch on social media. I'll read through some, John, and then you can jump in. So we've got Toon Army India saying he'd bring in Willock for Jolinton, Barnes in for Gordon, and he says, although I know this won't happen, Alex Murphy in at left back. Graham says, I'd drop Gordon. He was at fault on Sunday, not Big Dan Burn. Geordie says his team would see Pope, Burn, Jolinton and Gordon out. Ramsdale, Hall, Miley and Barnes in. Diamond says Sharon for Botman. Trippier hopefully will be back. Ramsey in for Jolinton. And he thinks that the game might suit Langer like other Champions League games have. Paul says Ramsey or Willock in for Jolinton, Sharon, Trippier for Botman and Kraft. Tempted to say Barnes for Gordon, as his league form has been miles off it, but he seems to play better in the Champions League. A lot of people are saying though Barnes in, Ramsey in, and a heck of a lot of people, John, saying that Ramsdale should come in as well. And surprisingly, given how bad he's been since his arrival, quite a few people are saying Elanga, because this game might actually suit him. Any takeaway from what we've heard there?
Can I just say one thing about this game might suit Elanga? Why? Why is all the other games not suited Lange, who was perfectly accustomed to the Premier League, having played Nottingham Forest last season? Lange's flattering to deceive. And by the way, if he comes in, Murphy's got to be dropped. Goodness gracious me. What message does that? If we want to send a message out with Gordon by dropping him, what does the message send out to Murphy if he's dropping this game? Having been subbed near the end of the game at West Ham, I thought that was a bad decision because he didn't deserve to be subbed. And it wasn't a good message to send out to the rest of the team when your best player subbed. And if you then follow it up by dropping him for Lange in this game, goodness gracious me, the only hope we've got's Murphy, the way he played down there. And Lange does not deserve. Why is he suddenly going to become, the Christmas fairy on top of the Christmas tree? Because why is that going to happen at this moment? I don't think he justifies coming in. He's had a few chances. And I'm not having a go. I hope he's going to come good and all that. But hey, needs must. We're not. Are we reduced to a wing and a prayer so much that we'll put a Lange in just because this game might suit him? Not for me. You've got to play Murphy and then decide who the other 10 are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's any debate about whether Jacob Murphy starts or not. He's the only one who's looking like he's going to produce either a goal or an assist. All the other wingers are flattering to deceive. So, yeah, it'd be harsh to drop him, and I can't see that happening at all. And to be honest, look, we've discussed it there. As many people have said, Ramsdale in, but as we both said, John, can't see that happening as much as we would like it to. Dan Burns not going to drop out because he hasn't got the options where the hole's fit enough in his eyes. Or clearly doesn't think he is. And Alex Murphy, look, if Alex Murphy was at the standard of a Premier League left back, he would have been in by now.
Of course,
Eddie Howe is not naive.
Of course,
to the standard of Dan Burn at left back. He can see what we can see, and if he'd had the options to play someone else like Alex Murphy, that would have happened. And unfortunately for Alex Murphy, he's just not at the level needed to be. I think the most likely change, John, probably comes in that midfield three alongside Bruno and Tonali. It's probably going to be one of Ramsey or Willock in. But even then, I say most likely. What we talking, is it even half likely? I don't know. Honestly, it wouldn't. Part of me, it wouldn't surprise me, if it was the same team that started against West Ham, other than maybe Kraft coming out for Trippier, and Eddie Howe just hoping that the riot act's been read and that can spark them into life. Come on, then. Is it going to spark them into life, John? Are they going to win this game?
Yeah, they are going to win this game. They're going to win this game because Bilbao are rubbish. And by the way, that's what I said before West Ham. We're going to win at West Ham because West Ham are rubbish. Only nobody bothered to listen up at St. James's Park. But yes, we're going to beat Bilbao. They're drifting in mid-table in La Liga, which is not a great competitive league like the Premier League. They've got beat by two well-known sides in the Champions League, Arsenal and Borussia Dortmund. They've only beaten the Azerbaijan minnows in the competition. They're awful. And by the way, we're at home in a competition rated by the players under the floodlights at St. James's Park in midweek. Yes, we're going to win. But I tell you what, I'm going to have to sit up and not go to bed for 48 hours after we beat Bilbao to think what I'm going to say about Brentford, because that's a whole different kettle of fish, that is. But yes, I think we'll win this, and I think we'll win 2-0, and then Eddie will say, and the players will say, well, that's a relief, and we're back to what we're best at. And weren't we that when we won 3 successive games on the trot at home in 8 days and went down to West Ham? And wasn't everything smelling of roses? And what happened down there? We smelt the manure, not the roses. And that's going to be what it's about. But we've got to do the business here first. It is important if we want to progress in the Champions League. We need 9 points because we'll have played only one away game by the time this is completed in the Champions League. We've got 2 successive away games to come in the Champions League. It's absolutely imperative that we beat Bilbao. But Bilbao is as weak as they get. Bilbao is as weak as Union were when we went away to Union. And I can see nothing but a win here. But what happens after that is for another day. But yes, that is the real crux of the matter, because we're going into what we do well here. A home match under lights on a big stage. We're then going into what we do awful, an away match on a Sunday afternoon in the capital with no glamour about it.
Yeah, I think they will win. Like you say, what happens next is for another day. That will be Thursday, as me and John preview that trip to Brentford. But I do think they're going to win. I can see them winning quite comfortably. And all that does really is reignite the debate of whether how can you do that tonight and win in such a good fashion, and you can't do it against a side who hadn't won at home since February. But we don't want to go over old ground. Hopefully, next time you see me and John, we will be discussing a victory for Newcastle in the Champions League. As John says, really important that they win this home game in the competition, because then it's a difficult couple of fixtures coming up away from St James's Park. Thank you to you guys for watching and listening. You know what to do by now. Get into the comments if you're on YouTube. Hit thumbs up, hit subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on the audio only channel, please leave us a rating and review. And remember to get your discounted NordVPN plan by clicking the link in the podcast description box. And myself and John will see you guys later in the week.